Oh my God, the archival footage of the like elderly women
Yes.
banging their drums and singing and getting like carried away by RCMP, like literally gives me chills just thinking about it.
Indigenous film has come such a long way.
All of these teachings exist in these films in one way or another.
There's certain things you just cannot run from.
You gonna learn
You're gonna
and you gonna
learn.
like it. We're here today with Adeline Bird. You, to me, are kind of the physical embodiment of a multi-hyphenate. I've counted 15. Let me know if I've missed out on any.
Whoa.
You're an Afro-Anishinaabe actress, producer, director, published author from Winnipeg, Manitoba Treaty for Rolling River First Nations. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Awesome. You're a graduate of the National Screen Institute's CBC New Indigenous Voices program. Your debut film, Nappy Hair and Eagle Feather, is featured on CBC Gem. You were one of Imaginative APTN's 2018 pitch winners and part of the 2019 cohort of Telefilm Canada's Talent to Watch. Your book, Be Unapologetically You, a self-love guide for women of color, is available at Indigo, and you have seemingly done it all. Is that am I missing anything?
No, but it's all storytelling, and that's why we're here.
Exactly, which
Yes.
is why I think that it's very fortunate. We're very fortunate to have you with us to talk about NFB Indigenous films, and maybe we can talk a little bit about what the structure of this conversation is going to be like. And can you maybe walk us through what the 7 sacred teachings are and why we are interpreting them? We're using them as a framework to talk about Indigenous storytelling at the NFB.
Yeah. So I have been a part of the Indigenous filmmaking community. We're very small. We all kind of know each other. Everybody knows each other. And so I have been a part of it since I think like 2013. I started off with the Winnipeg Indigenous Film Collective. And then we had our Winnipeg Indigenous Film festival. And so I've always been around and I've watched Indigenous film, Indigenous media come so far. Like I can't even keep up with it anymore. There was a point in my career where I can literally count on my hands how many films were out there. And now it's just incredible where we are today. Still more work that needs to be done. But like since I've started, Indigenous film has come such a long way. And I'm just so grateful to watch it and be a witness and be a part of this movement. Um, so we framed this in the 7 teachings, and I just want to say that there are some films that we're going to be talking about that don't follow the 7 teachings, but have similar protocols. The 7 teachings is very much comes from an Anishinaabe framework, and so Ojibwe Anishinaabe framework, and so I'm going to also just kind of the films that we do have that don't have these protocols and their practices, I'm going to showcase just similarities and bring those differences in and showcase those differences. We are using them as a framework to talk about these films because they are a framework that a lot of people in Canada are aware of. And like I said, although not every nation has these protocols, there are similarities within other nations that share these. I'm also Afro-Anishinaabe, so I think it's just important that when I'm talking about these films, I'm talking from a framework that I am from.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. It does kind of, I feel like when you first talked to us about this idea, it felt so intuitive because they are such universal teachings, right? And I love that you called it 7 ways of seeing, and I think that's probably what we're going to call this episode, because it's not only 7 ways of seeing life and seeing community and seeing ourselves. It's also 7 ways of seeing filmmaking, and these ways of seeing these different films from like quite a personal standpoint, right? But
Yes.
that speak on very universal experiences.
Themes. Yeah, they're very universal. And like each film has these themes in them, you know, even if I did pull them from one teaching, each film has each teaching in them. So it's very easy to
Totally.
do.
Great. Okay, well, we've got a lot of chatting ahead of us. So I would love to just dive right into the first film.
Accommodation, misread as assimilation. I've learned how to fit into your world by hiding the truth.
Anishinaabe, the people, the originals.
No amount of holy water can clean a savage blood. Jesus loves me. The Bible tells me so. There's no one stopping.
Sometimes they dance. Sometimes they step on each other's toes.
The 7 teachings are love, respect, courage, honesty, humility, truth, and wisdom. And like you said, all of them appear in all of these films, but we're choosing to see each film through the lens of one of the teachings, right? And this one you've chosen love. Why did you choose love for Beneath the Hidden Island of Ethics?
Well, in the film, the character baby girl, that's where she lands, is in that teaching of love. And what I really love about this film is it really deep dives through the art of stop motion into generational trauma. And you see baby girl having to navigate religion and the colonial constructs of religion and her ancestors, and just the difference of the way both both went back and forth with baby girl, and her interactions, where the ancestor, the grandmother ancestor, guided her gently and didn't punish her. And so that was such a reflection of just real love, you know. It's patience, it's guidance, it's allowing people to grow and see them do what they need to do and understand the lessons that they need to understand, without interfering with the things like fear, you know, all the things that we all do.
Yeah, I love that you've chosen Beneath as the first teaching, because I feel like this film by Terrell Calder, it does kind of encapsulate the 7 sacred teachings, doesn't it? Right? It like kind of it structures the film by comparing the 7 sacred teachings with the 7 deadly sins, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
it puts them kind of it shows them kind of with a mirror, where it shows how her Indigenous upbringing is being rooted in these teachings, whereas her there's this like force, this colonial force that is trying to sort of strip her of that Indigenous identity and root her education in these like negative constructs that are Catholic, right? And I love that it's able to give us like a really great view of all of these teachings in one film.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I also think it's really beautiful that Terrell was able to do that through the art of stop motion. You know,
Absolutely.
a lot of times, and fiction narrative. Even though I'm sure there are a lot of like truths in her reality as a filmmaker, and parallels, I think there's something really magical about being able to tell a story through a fictional lens.
Absolutely. And it's obviously super, she creates this very kind of chaotic world.
Yes.
And it's like she's navigating through all of these emotions. And ultimately, the way for her to navigate through that is through the love that is being shown to her through her grandmother, right? Instead, and that is kind of like presented as an antidote to the 7 deadly sins that are being like pushed on her as a form of like repression, right?
Yeah. And at such a young age. Like, I think that's
Yeah.
also like at such a pivotal age, right? And then watching baby girl make that decision at a young age, and see those parallels. Like, again, it's just very like truthful in terms of like what we experience as Indigenous people.
Absolutely, absolutely. We haven't touched so much on like her Métis identity, but I'm wondering, do you have any like things to say about that, or like, did you ever talk to Terrell Calder about this film, and like, how do you interpret that?
So Terrell and I might be related.
No
That's always a
way.
possibility within our community. Terrell and I
Oh,
might
I
be
love
related.
that. Okay,
So
sick.
she's from Fort Francis. I'm from Rolling River. But there are a lot of like birds and from her community.
Mm,
Anyway, it's a thing. But my mushum is Métis from North Dakota. And so at working on her recent set, I really got to like know her in terms of like what Métis culture looks like, because my mushum died when I was in grade, like I was 12 years old. So I wasn't even like conscious of Métis culture. It was just around me, like it was just around me.
yeah.
I wasn't conscious of it in the way that I am now. Um, Going on a journey on her recent film, with her and helping out with her set, it really tapped into my identity, helped me tap into my identity and really understand and maybe look into, or not maybe, but really look into my grandfather's experience, and just like all the conversations, because we're living in the age of what does it mean to be Métis? What does it mean to be Métis? And like my grandfather's father was a French settler who married an Anishinaabe woman. And so I grew up knowing Métis as someone who is white, European, and Anishinaabe or Cree or whatever First Nations community you come from. And so in the age of pretendians, this has been a long conversation about what does it mean to be Métis? Oh, it means you're from Manitoba. It means you're from here. But again, in my reality, what I know to be true, where I grew up with my mushum, it meant being Métis meant being someone of European and First Nations descent.
Yeah. So I think it's so important that Terrell was able to bring an identity like that to the forefront with this film. Isn't she
Yeah.
working? So she's working on another film right now, isn't she?
Yes, bastard. I'm excited about that.
Yeah. That's going to be good.
Yes.
So I see in your notes here that one of the film's most important messages is that healing begins when Indigenous children are allowed to see themselves as worthy of love outside of colonial definitions of goodness or purity. The 7 grandfather teaching of love is therefore not only emotional, but political, spiritual, and loving Indigenous identity becomes an act of resistance. End quote.
Yes.
I love that. I feel like, do you want to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah. I'm going to share an experience with being a foster parent, and I took care of girls. That's mostly who I cared for. And one of the things that I noticed, and this happens to Black children and Indigenous children, as coming from both communities, I recognize these patterns, where there is this idea that that we can handle certain things, that we're strong enough to handle certain things. Well, these communities go through so much, so these kids should be able to handle certain things. There's this idea that we're not allowed to be soft, that we can't be little ballerinas, that we can't be, little divas, whatever it may be. That, you know, our children have to be strong and these are all true. These are all true, but that becomes a super heavy thing. And you don't realize that until you're a lot older, that you're actually carrying a lot of things at such a young age. This is why we have, we're seeing like such a movement about rest and how rest is revolutionary, because we don't get those opportunities to be soft. We don't get those opportunities to be, like just be, to just
And
exist
yeah,
from very
be
young.
vulnerable, taken care of.
Exactly. And so I, joy is political. All of it is being just okay. So I started taking ballet 2 months ago, and like
No
I would
way.
cry I would cry like a baby putting on my slippers. And I was like to my sister, "Why am I crying like this?" She's like, "It's because this is probably something you've always wanted to do as a young girl, and here you are
Yeah.
getting to heal your inner child." But I didn't
Yeah.
get that because first off, we couldn't afford it. We were living in public housing. And my mom did her best, but those weren't accessible to us. I'm sure she probably didn't even there was nobody around to teach her what it meant to take your kid to practice every day, because
Yeah.
meanwhile she's trying to just survive and get to work and come home and feed us.
Mm.
So being able to do all these things and being able to just be soft and enjoy joy without feeling guilt is such an act of love, and it is really political.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. Oh my God. The ballet slippers. Totally relate to that. And that's probably why it's like obviously such an amazing and such a political and personal choice to put the baby as the main character, right? And it's like it's not just like a young woman or a young girl, like it's a baby, and it's like the thing that Indigenous children are like not allowed to be. And yeah, being able to tap into the creativity of it and the softness of it and everything is just so great to watch in the film. Okay, speaking of children, should we move on to the next one?
Sure.
Ici, il faut faire presque 1 heure et demie de route pour aller chercher de la nourriture.
Te rappelles-tu, Zach, quand j'ai demandé à ma mère pour avoir une amoureuse?
Pourquoi t'as demandé la permission?
Je sais pas, ça me tentait d'avoir une amoureuse.
You look funny with your hair.
Thank you. All right, look at me. We're very connected to our spirituality and our feelings, and we're not afraid to talk about it and to let each other know when something's wrong.
La culture, il faut pas que ça se perde, mais c'est une grosse responsabilité de savoir comment faire toutes les petites choses. Tout le monde sait ce qui s'est passé avant, les pensionnats, toutes ces blessures-là. Je souhaite juste que l'amour se répande dans nos communautés. C'est tout ce que je souhaite.
You've chosen Ninan Awasat, We the Children by Kim Obamsoen, to see well, we're seeing this film through the lens of respect, of one of the grandfather teachings.
Yes.
Do you want to talk a little bit about what the film is about?
Yeah. So this film, it goes into just like really talking to youth and allowing youth to just be who they are. So this film becomes an act of respect because it refuses to like showcase Indigenous youth and the stereotypes that we usually see on camera, and it's really just beautiful. You know, it's treated as the youth are treated as like the knowledge keepers and the ones with the knowledge and the foresight of where things are going. And that's what I really enjoyed about this particular film. And I love just how openly they talked about their hopes and their fears and the things that are affecting the other teens around them. You know, some of them had parents who were alcoholics. Some of them had parents who became clean and once were alcoholics. And then you had some that never were raised around that. And so just to see the different perspectives and just the way that the children were living their lives was beautiful. That's why I chose this film.
It is such a beautiful film. I love that it is completely told from the child's perspective. Like there's no intervention or interference from like any adults really, like in the storytelling. It's entirely just these kids, their stories, what they have to say, what they're feeling. And Kim did this amazing thing, and I think it was done over COVID, and that's why she was able to do it like over such a long period. But she took 6 years to make this film, and she has footage from these kids in such a major like transition period in their life where they go from being like real babies, like, you know, 7, 8, 9 years old to being in high school and having completely different perspectives on life. And you actually see them at the end of the film and like where they want to go and what their hopes and dreams are. And how like there's that one kid, I don't remember what his name is, but he like says at the very beginning that he's like he wants to like build stuff. He wants to be like an architect. And then we see like at the end of the film that he is actually going to school for architecture. And it's like crazy that these kids are making their dreams happen, and it's so full of joy. And but still they say some like incredibly mature things.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. And are so resilient and open to talking about those challenging things that they're experiencing and seeing, but still being able to come out as the people that they've always wanted to be and doing the things that they've always wanted to do. You know, and that's like the magic of the whole film.
Absolutely. It really does kind of bring up, I mean, like we said, all of these teachings exist in these films in one way or another, but like even just love, the fact that these kids are clearly shown a lot of love and shown a lot of respect, that they're able to speak so honestly about their thoughts and their dreams and their feelings, is clearly a testament to the communities that surround them and the families that they're from.
Yep. And to go back to the teaching of respect, the respect from the community around them in terms of what they offer to the community. You know, there's no. I have a friend who does a lot of like workshop and teachings around adult supremacy. That's a very real thing where adults see themselves as, well, I'm the adult now and I get to say what goes, and you know what I mean, when they're these youth and children are carrying so much knowledge and so much like perspective that you would never think of. I remember that being a foster parent, like all of a sudden one of the girls I'm caring for says something to me that I never even would have thought of, you know, because they're just like the upcoming generation and can see things and foresee things that I can't because of my pain, of my hurt, or whatever it may be, you know? I just find children to be so resilient.
Yeah, absolutely. I wonder if and I wonder if maybe you can speak on your own experience with this, but I know that we hear a lot about how Indigenous cultures really emphasize like respect of your elders and this like kind of reverence for elders in the community and how they occupy like a really important role in decision making and in child raising. And I like it's cool to see how in this film that is sort of the same reverence is shown to children. Do you feel like it is more of like an inherent like respect for each generation that exists in these communities, or like do you feel like that's how you were raised? Did you feel that same level of respect put on you as a child?
No, because I grew up in an urban setting.
Okay.
I think these children have just this is my observation, is they have a different, because they're not in an urban setting, and they share that. Like we see the difference between those who live in the city and us, right? And so I think they're being in an urban setting. It's almost like Terrell's film Beneath, where you're up against those types of colonial systems, and so it's more challenging to navigate things when you have these protocols and these beliefs that are like inherently in your DNA, but then you're in a world that goes against those things. And so I think it's, as someone an urban person, it's a little bit more challenging to follow those protocols and to have community in that form because of capitalism and all the things that get in the way of good decision making sometimes.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's really cool to see these kids in Manawan from different communities, like they all have different identities. I think they have children from Atikamekw, Iyu Cree, and Innu nations. They clearly there's such beautiful scenes of them like at the beach and, riding their bikes everywhere and seemingly having so much freedom. And I mean, maybe that's just like the romance of the film putting it forward, but it does seem like they have.
I think it's like anywhere though, right? Like you're gonna have your challenges in a more smaller town, reserve setting, and then you're gonna have your challenges in a city setting. I think it's your community. I think it's like how far in the journey of healing your community has come along in. I can see a difference. I travel a lot, and I'm back and forth from Toronto to Winnipeg, and I do see a difference in terms of like how people gather, where people gather, what community looks like, and every province, every space is different, and so every outcome is going to be different.
Totally.
How someone's life is going to, and I don't think that just falls in our community. I think that's every community.
Yeah. No, it's true. It is so unique to every community. I can't help but remember the scene when they're all sitting on the couch, and this is like early on in the film, so they're still very young, and the three boys are being asked if they have girlfriends or something. I can't remember. It was like, and he goes like, no, like I don't have a girlfriend. Like, I don't have time for that. He's like, they're so like, I don't know. Some of them are like, oh, maybe one day, and it's such like fun. It's so funny how each of them have their very sort of specific way of interpreting the questions that they're asked.
Yeah. It's so cute.
Yeah, they're so cute. I recommend this film to everybody. It's such a great feature-length documentary. Even just the idea of filming a documentary over 6 years with like children from 3 different communities, like seems like such a logistical nightmare, but like such a gift also. Like I wonder what her relationship is to those communities now.
It's
Yeah.
beautiful. It was probably so enriching for Kim because
Yeah.
again, like when you get to do that work, when you get to be in different communities and get to see how different communities do things, you know what I mean? Even if they're like right next to each other, there's gonna be certain things that are, that are gonna be different. It's really, really special. It's really special to just see how other people do things and
Yeah. Yeah.
and where we're at in society, where our children are at. It's really cool.
Yeah.
But
I had one.
I do want to say that like I really love the way Kim was able to like capture the emotions of the film. You wouldn't think that a film like that of just like observing children would be entertaining or like you would learn something from it. She did such a good job at like just creating space for them to do what they needed to do. You can tell it was an intuitive type of film, and an alignment type of film. So it's one of those pieces where like you just got to see it, you know?
You do. Shout out Kim.
If you can see behind me here, these yellow and gray plastic boxes, these are what are known as geophones. And SWN has set them up all along Highway 11. And soon their thumper trucks, or seismic testing trucks, as they're officially known, will drive along the road using these to help them determine if there's shale gas about.
Once we found that out, we said, we can't allow this to happen. We need to do something. We need to stop it. So the day that SWN decided to start doing their testing, this huge crowd of people marched down to where the thumper trucks were and stood in front of them.
As summer came to an end, tensions flared. SWN vehicles were spotted to be increasingly on the move. However, the company overestimated their ability to escape the community's watchful eye.
As you can see behind me, there's been a barricade that's been erected here on Route 34. Now, if you look behind this barricade, there's actually a gate, and if you go through the gate, you will find the vehicles of SWN. Now, these are thumper trucks, and they have been patrolling the backwoods here of New Brunswick.
They were, housing all of their gear in this one area. In my mind, I was like, that's kind of stupid. You built something for us to hold you in.
Now, with this barricade up, the trucks are unable to go out and do their testing, and the protectors of the land and the protectors of the water, as they call themselves here, they say that they will stay here until SWN agrees to move out of the province.
It just seemed like it was the fight that needed to be fought.
Yeah, so, okay, Featherfall. Incredible film by Ozzie Michelin, documenting a pivotal moment of Indigenous resistance in 2013. Ozzie captured an image that went viral of a protest in Elsipogtog that sort of put the community on blast a little bit and put this like huge resistance into the mainstream. And this was like, and then the film, which is from just 2 years ago, is a revisit of this community. So it's like 10 years later, where are they now? Which actually we can talk about this a bit later, but Alanis Abamsawin has done this also, this sort of similar structure with her films where she'll like document a major event with a community and then come back years later and kind of check in with them again. So maybe we can talk about that a bit later. And why did you choose this film for the teaching of courage?
Well, it's that image, that iconic image of Amanda holding the feather in front of the military. And it takes courage to be able to step into that. And like listening in the documentary to Amanda, like talking to, like, it was all just her, like, oh wait, I just need to go and like do this. Like, and it wasn't any, she wasn't trying to be a hero. That's none of it. She wasn't saying like to her friend, go take a picture of me. I'm gonna, you know what I mean? It was all just pure alignment. It was all just what needed to happen. And I love those moments. And I think as women, we are the protectors of this planet, and we are the that natural driving force of understanding what's happening around us isn't okay, and that just that like natural feeling of taking care of, like I don't know about you, but like for me, I don't have children, but I always need to be taking care of something or someone, or, like I just have this natural maternal feeling. And so this documentary and Amanda's story to me was just very a maternal thing, and her wanting to make sure that her children have a future.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I absolutely love this interpretation of or this message that Amanda is basically teaching to everybody by doing this, and the fact that the image became mainstream meant that a lot of people were exposed to this very present structure in Mi'kmaq culture that Ozzy talks about. He did a little video with us to promote the film when it came out, and he said that in Mi'kmaq culture, it is the women who lead and the men who protect. So, and we'll see this a lot in like other protests or other like protest films or films that like document land defenders or community members standing up against colonial violence, where the women are the ones that are on the front lines. Like, they're the ones who are leading the resistance. They are the ones that are like organizing, the ones that are in charge of like making sure things are getting done, and I like that I feel like a lot of women can interpret it as like a maternal, desire to care, but it's also to lead, right? And lead with this sort of very natural instinct. So it's like obviously it's with care, and it's with such like even this and the image of the woman giving the flower. It's leading softly with like the courage to be on the front lines and put yourself in the line of fire with like absolutely nothing but your care for your community and love in your heart, like
and your femininity.
And your femininity, literally. Yeah, that's the pure courage. You're so right.
Yeah.
Like,
and it, like you mentioned, like the softness of it, because it's such a like going up against these fracking companies, anything that involves military. I can only imagine, like I literally can only imagine what fear that would bring to your nervous system. And so to be able to be still tapped into that when such fear is in the air is it's like there's no words, like there's no words for it. And I think that like when Ozzy, checks back in years later, and she's like, I'm still healing from that time. I'm still deeply affected from that time. Like, yeah, it went viral, but I'm still dealing with the after effects of those moments, and like, those are the parts that I think are so important. Like I remember when seeing those images online and like seeing seeing the one protester on the cop cars and it was on fire and he was holding his red power flag and like just feeling like, whoa, that's so cool. But like that probably was such a nerve-wracking, you know what I mean? Like there's just the energy around it.
Oh yeah.
It was
It's still
probably just so,
traumatic.
yeah, exactly. And so I
Yeah.
I have these layered feelings about these things because it's like, yeah, but also like people are gonna be okay.
Yeah, it's like, yes, but also who is taking care of these women? Like,
Yeah,
is anyone like, I really hope there's people who are like giving them hugs every day and like listening to them and holding them and like
yeah, exactly,
being
exactly.
there, like, because that's also what the film emphasizes is like in this kind of like matriarchal structure, there is like this, I mean, you know, you're still put in a position where you have like responsibilities to lead, and then it's like you just have to make sure that you're well surrounded afterwards, because the aftermath of like putting yourself out there and having that kind of courage and having and living with that kind of softness and go and putting that softness forward always, and always leading with like love and care and, you know, caring for other people, you better hope that there's like that you like people need to remember that that doesn't come with its consequences
Absolutely,
emotionally.
absolutely. But even when you do have that care, like even within the doc, like when the people were arrested, the community was outside to take them and make sure that they,
Yeah.
you know, that
Yeah.
they could get
Yeah.
out of jail, right? You know, and that like that was still very much demonstrated. But I think the fact that 10 years later that they're still carrying that showcases that like there's still so much more that we can do. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like
Yeah.
it just showcases there's so much more that we can do. And so I always wonder like should we be creating this is my social services brain, but like should when these types of things come up, should we be finding people and training people to be like ready for these type of traumas, you know what I mean? I feel that way about the TV and film industry is like we should be having people outside these systems that are there to actually support people with the specific type of traumas that they experience. And so I think it's the more we see documentaries like this, the more we can recognize patterns as a society. I think we'll get better and better and better at being able to challenge these systems and it not be so traumatizing, even though it majority of the time it is.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I feel like I could talk about like like the courage of women in this film and in like Indigenous communities for literally forever. There's another film that is not on this list, and I just want to say off the record, or maybe on the record, I don't know, The Stand, that came out. Oh my God, the videos, the archival footage of the elderly women banging their drums and singing and getting like carried away by police, by RCMP, like literally gives me it gives me chills just thinking about it. And I'm like, I guess like that courage is also what I'm imagining like Amanda must have been tapping into, is like generations of women who've been doing this, you know?
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
it literally blows my mind. I find it like, yeah, it's incredible.
It's
like, yeah,
been happening since time immemorial. You know, that's why there's such a war on Indigenous women, you know, with MMIWG.
yeah,
You know, I have friends who are, you know, politicians, lawyers, executives, and I watch the way that even in these titles, they're still treated like secondary humans, not seen as capable of being in leadership. This goes for myself as well. This idea that our beliefs aren't equivalent to whatever the system's beliefs are. I always say, like, I always say to people, like, if you have two types of Indigenous friends, if you have a female Indigenous friend or a two-spirit Indigenous friend, you are going to be so knowledgeable. Like, you're going to be knowledgeable, because I have to say, like, both are
You're about to be reading.
Yeah,
You're about to be reading.
You're gonna learn. You're gonna
You're
learn.
gonna learn, girl. So true. Because we got shit to say. Like, people got shit. The women got shit to say. Like, that's so true. You gonna learn.
You're gonna
And
learn.
you gonna like it. I love that. Okay. Period. Shall we move on? Yes, women. Okay. Foster child.
I came to my foster home when I was 2 and stayed there permanently. I became part of this family, the Wilsons, and they became part of me. And I had brothers, a sister, aunts, uncles, cousins. But when I got older, I realized I was a foster child. I looked different. I had a different last name. But I had a family. And as the years went by, it didn't seem to matter to me who I was, where I came from. I'm 35 now. It does matter.
So we're talking about Foster Child, which is a 1987 film by Gil Cardinal, who was born to a Métis mother but raised by a non-Indigenous foster family, and goes back to his roots to sort of find answers about where he came from and connect with some blood relatives. It's kind of widely seen as a huge moment in documentary filmmaking. It won a special jury prize at Banff and lots of international awards. Apparently, according to broadcaster Jesse Wente, the former director of Canada's Indigenous Screen Office, Foster Child is one of the great docs to come out of Canada, and nobody but Gil could have made it. So tell us why you chose this film to look at through the lens of honesty.
Well, because of just how honest Gil was in the film, and just how raw the whole film was. Like, right to the very end, it was just like, you're happy for him, and then you're sad for him, and then you're like excited, and then you're sad again. Like, just the emotional roller coaster I went as a viewer. I can only imagine what it was like to be Gil. And I also chose this film because, as I've been sharing in this series, I was a foster parent. I also have family members who are in foster care, and I really strongly believe in sharing these stories and hearing the truth and the rawness of the experiences. I think the fact that Gil was at an age to be able to take all this in, and I was really taken aback by just how much secrecy people had. Like, when he went to go sit with the social worker, and she was like, well, I don't want to tell you this because I'm afraid that of how you're going to respond, just how much the people around him thought that they were protecting him, when that's not what he needed. The real healing he needed was the truth and like honesty. He needed honesty to be able to really understand his reality and his existence.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's almost like there was so much, it was like there wasn't very much trust in him to to just have the information that he wanted, despite the fact that he was a grown man who like is very gentle and like soft spoken and intelligent and like thoughtful in his approach, and kept reiterating to people like over and over again, I just want to know, you know, I want to know where I come from. I want to know what the story is. I'm, you know, yeah, it's interesting to. I was so taken aback by that scene where he's talking to the social worker, and she's like, "I'm just not at liberty to tell you everything because I don't really know." They didn't really talk or unpack like why that is, you know. But I found it so disturbing that he had this like giant stack of papers in front of him, and he just wasn't allowed to know the details of what happened to him. Really, realistically, what happened to him and his family.
And the bravery it took for him to be honest about his existence and not feeling like he belonged, and to go on that journey is just incredible to me. And I wish, I hope that there's like a way for the NFB to bring this film back, because it's still, bring it up to 2026. I'm not sure what that would look like, because it's still very relevant in this time. Like, it's still, I know it was done in the 80s, but like, geez, that story, like, I really just, you know, I really appreciated just how much, like, they didn't romanticize the experience. You know, there has a tendency to be some of that when it comes to talking about, you know, child welfare, 60 Scoops, residential schools. So, not all the time, but like, you know, there's some of that. Well, you know, well, you were fed, you had parents that took care of you and all that stuff. But like, the psychological piece of not being with a parent is so detrimental. When I went into when I became a foster parent, I went in with the, I did it through a program, an Indigenous program that told me that these kids are going home. And there was comfort in that for me. And a lot of the times what I would do is I would actually invite them over to my home so that they could come and eat dinner with us and see what their bedrooms look like and all those things. Like, I think it's more important because families are going to need help. Parents do need help. I don't think that Gil's mom wanted to give up on him. I think there were just so many people who told her, you're not equipped to take care of your child. So she just believed, we call it manifest destiny. So she believed what the system was telling her. And there's a lot of that, rather than nurturing the families, rather than empowering the parents, empowering the children. So it also gave me a glimpse of also just how far we've come in the child welfare system, but also how far we still need to go.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, it's incredibly unique to be able to look at this story through, like, having experienced it yourself as a foster mom. So, yeah, it was so interesting to hear also even his foster mom talk about how, like, that's just like, you know, it wasn't really that big of a deal to her. Like, it was like, yeah, he just came and then he just stayed, and yeah, it was like he just stayed and then that was it, you know.
That was it.
Kind of,
they just brought him here and they said, you're going to take care of him, and that was kind of like, to me, that's horrifying. That's horrifying. And like, again, so one of the unique experiences I had as a foster parent is I come from the Native community, and I was raising children that I knew their parents, you know? And so I was able to go, okay, I know where your mom is. I'm going to call with play. You know what I mean? Like, because I came from community, I knew what these parents were experiencing and was able to figure out things in that way. Whereas there are a lot of parents, foster parents like that just, you are just a child in their home and their job is to take care of you, feed you, clothe you. That's it. No real love, no real connecting to culture. One of the biggest reasons why I went into becoming a foster parent is because one of my friends who was working in in the foster care system was telling me how there are a bunch of Indigenous kids being fostered by Filipino parents, and they're adopting Filipino culture. And I was like, no, okay, this is a full reason as to why I need to foster. And I began to foster. And so if the kids that I was caring for were connected to their powwow family, whatever, I would make sure that that's set up, make sure that they're a part of culture. But that was a time when we weren't having conversations the way we are having conversations now, you know? And that wasn't a time when being in community, being around your culture, it's literally survival. Like it's literally like water. It's literally like air, you know?
And it clearly catches up with you when you're not exposed to it, because it's like Gil clearly had so much, he had so much that he was so thirsty for community and for culture, and to feel like connected to his Métis identity. It was that was part of what made me so sad too. I was like, this guy is like,
and then to find out his mom is gone, right? And then to not ever be able to look the person. I couldn't imagine. Like the thought makes me cry. Like want to cry. I could not imagine never seeing my mom's face and not knowing who my mom is. Like that's crazy to me. You know?
Yeah. Ugh. That's a
everybody
tough
should
one
watch this film.
Everybody should watch the film. It's also beautiful. It's beautiful. It's like it's so 80s also. Like it gives you a great kind of little glimpse into like
the
80s vibes, the time, and like
there's some inspiration in there. There's some inspiration.
There is, and it's beautifully shot.
Yes.
We get some really nice shots of oh my gosh, where is he? I totally forgot. I'm gonna insert a voiceover of where this film takes place. I forgot. But yeah, do you think, so this wasn't actually told, I saw in your notes that you mentioned the 60s scoop. And is this, I didn't, because it wasn't like explicitly said, I guess it works out.
I see child welfare, 60 scoops, residential school. It's like all the same sort of.
Okay. So it's like, it's not officially, this story is not officially part of the 60s scoop.
No. I think it's more child welfare, this one. This one's more
gotcha.
leans into child welfare.
Okay.
But I don't know, like it could have been from the time of the 60s and they didn't call it the 60 scoop back then. In the 80s?
Yeah, maybe.
You know what I'm saying?
Maybe.
And
yeah,
maybe
true.
now they would call it the 60 scoop. I'm not sure.
Right.
But in the film, it was more child welfare.
Yeah. And back to to wrap this up with the whole teaching of honesty, like it's interesting that obviously he wasn't necessarily taught honesty as a sacred teaching because he grew up in a non-Indigenous household, but he is so raw, like with everybody that he encounters. He's so honest, so himself. And I wonder, like, were you like really shocked by that, or like taken aback, or was it kind of, did you know anything about Gil already?
No, I think there are just certain things that are in our DNA that naturally come out at a specific time in our lives. There's certain things that we can't hide from. There's certain things you just cannot run from. And what I believe we are witnessing in this film is he just got to a point of like, there's just something, you can't run away from this anymore. You got to face this straight on why he was so thirsty for it, because there's no way to go on in life without that information, without that understanding. So I that's how I view it. I resonate with, there's just certain things that are in your DNA, and it all just comes out, you know, and you're, you know, even for myself, becoming an activist, I was like, where is this coming from? This is just a part of your DNA. This is just who you are, you know, the reason why you're so strong, the reason why I'm so strong and can be able to position myself in leadership is that's just a part of my DNA. And so I
Yeah.
just feel like honesty is one of those things as Indigenous people we can never run from. Never run
So
from.
true. Yeah. Wow. Well, it definitely comes through. Everybody watch Foster Child
Yes.
and learn a thing or two about honesty and about the system, and see some beautiful shots of 1980s Edmonton, which is where this film was shot.
Run.
You have medicine. Don't be afraid. It's a gift. Our power and our resistance is rooted in our medicine. Remember to guard your inkwell.
Humility. So we
Yeah.
are talking about Inquo for When the Starving Return by Amanda Strong and Spotted Fawn Productions. This is an incredible stop motion animated film that came out last fall. And it's an adaptation of Dene storyteller Richard Van Camp's original short story. And it follows Two-Spirit protagonist Dove, who is young, enigmatic, and gender fluid, and just absolutely badass, and harnesses the strength of their Inquo, which is ancestral medicine and truth, to confront the terrifying flesh-eating creatures, the Wetago. And tell us, Adeline, why did you choose this to see through the lens of humility?
Well, because we watch Dove like find their humility through their medicine to attempt to explore climate collapse, greed, survival through like ancestral knowledge. And it was I love that they were able to do that through stop motion. And through this really, really beautiful character who is non-binary, which I also felt like was like the fact that they were non-binary was also a reflection of the land, which is also non-binary, you know, like in many
I like that.
sense is both, you know? So I don't know if that was Amanda's goal, but like that's how I viewed it. I'm like, oh, that makes total sense, you know? And yeah, just like the humans aren't above the land, and that we're not like humans aren't above the animals. We're all an ecosystem. And yeah, I just feel like Amanda and the underlying story that Richard tells does such an amazing job at showcasing that. And that's why I picked
Absolutely.
humility for this film. But with this film, it was between love or humility. I was like, I feel like it's more humility.
Yeah, I totally see that. And like in that great interview that Richard gave, where he's like, Amanda took the story and made it into this like stop motion horror that was even more terrifying than I ever could have written or imagined in my own stories. And I was like, there you go, Richard being a humble king, like recognizing Amanda's work. Like, I was like, yeah, it's all about humility, this film, actually.
Yeah, well, I think that's like the beauty of stop motion is like it gives this like haunting feeling, you know, and even if it is really pretty, you still feel like, oh, there's something here. And that's why I feel like this story, it fits stop motion. I think any type of like horror or anything that has to do with with a societal thing that we're up against, I feel like stop motion like brings that out in a way that I don't think any other type of film can.
I love that. That's so interesting. Is it because stop motion is an incredibly humbling like medium to use because it's so like it's kind of fidgety and it's like
Yes.
it's very idiosyncratic and like
Yeah.
very what is the word? It's like minutieux, like it's all about the minutia
Yeah.
of it. Like it's
Yeah.
super you have to be so careful and like I don't know, I always imagine like being on a stop motion set and someone accidentally like sneezing and like the whole thing just like getting like all a bit crooked and like and then you just have to like I don't know, it's like ruins like weeks of work or something or like you accidentally like twitch and the hand gets like
Goes
whacked
the other
out
way.
to
Yeah.
it goes the other
Yeah.
way and
Yeah. No, you know what? It might be a little bit of that. I feel like it might be a little bit of that, but I do think it is the level of care that goes into a stop motion. And it's also it can be an isolating experience. So as an animator, right? And that can be an isolating experience. So I don't know. I just think there's something very like maybe that's where like that feeling, that hollow, like lonely feeling that stop motion kind of gives you comes from. It's like that it gives you the animator is usually by themselves. I don't know. I don't know. But
yeah. Wait, stop motion animators, sound off in the chat. Let us know.
let us know. Let us know.
Like, are you lonely? Do you want to talk about it? Do you need us to come hang out in the stop motion studio?
Yeah.
We've got a lot of stop motion animators here at the NFB who are
Yeah,
working
you
very hard
do.
on their
Yeah, you
projects.
do.
So let us know, NFB animators, what's going on? Is everything okay? Okay, and back to Dove. I love what you said here about like how they approach healing through relationship, reciprocity, and respect rather than ego. So like the whole like Dove is a protagonist and is a hero really, but at no point do they display any kind of like I don't know, like any kind of quality that isn't entirely humble and they're so like I don't know. Yeah, they're not coming from a place of ego.
The not
Yeah.
hero. And I love that. I love that they're a hero, but they're not. Because it just showcases more of a humanness, right? We recognize our heroes, but aren't heroes. You know what I mean? And I love that you're bringing that up because that's actually such a beautiful movement. And it's something that I recognize in Indigenous storytelling because I do a lot of like jury work with the Indigenous Screen Office and Canada Arts Council. So I get to see a lot of Indigenous projects. And it's one thing that I notice is that we have a tendency to stay away from, first off, like heroes, but also like the idea of romance. The way we write romantic stories is not romance. It's never like that. And even so, in the way that we write heroes, they're never heroes, but they are. You know, it's a romantic story, but it isn't. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so, it's one of the things that I really enjoyed about Dove, and just like how
Well, it's not rooted in the individual, right? It's like
Exactly.
rooted in community and the inquo, right? Like the
and
magic
the
of ancestral
relationship.
healing. Yeah.
Exactly. The relationship with the medicines, the land, the people, and that's what makes that like hero aspect is you being able to care for all those things and recognize the need for certain things. Like I would say even the artists that I'm here with at this Banff, everybody is with this retreat that I'm at, everybody's a different type of artist. They do, there's people in dance, there's people in film, there's people in writing, comedy, all everywhere, everything. But the one thing about each of them is they're all very, they've got this very like, they do fucking amazing shit. Sorry, we can take this out.
No, we'll bleep it out. It'll be great.
They do amazing things, and it's like, wow, I would have never thought about that, you know. And they're just being themselves, literally.
And it's not rooted in the individual. It's like is that what they have in common? Is like they have this. Do you find that their stories are often rooted in stuff that's like not egocentric?
Yeah, it's rooted in their identity, it's rooted in their community, it's rooted in what they're seeing in the world, how they want to help the world. You know, it's so blending. Like I earlier met one artist who's from New Zealand, Maui, and the dad is from, her mom's from Maui, and her dad is from I can't remember, another indigenous tribe. And she's like, so what I'm doing is I'm blending both matriarchal ideologies into one and showcasing how they, you know, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I would want to see that. Like that is so neat and so different. Yeah. Just so, to me, revolutionary. You know, I want to see that, but it's.
Oh, we need more of that. 100%. Like the film world needs more of that. Like if anybody's listening, for the love of God, like no more stories about like your like. I mean, yeah, individual experience is awesome, but it's like, yeah, rooted outside of the ego. I think is so important.
It is. And my other favorite thing about Inkwell and just Indigenous storytelling overall is how we make the land a character. And it's one of the things I loved about this film is like the land is so beautiful and such a character in it.
They build this incredible world with like through the stop motion and through, I think they do like, they do some sort of, we made a video about this, but I'm sure we'll insert a clip of it of like how they created the landscape and how they used like technology to big T technology to like create this incredibly vibrant world that does speak for itself. Like you said, yeah, there's the little kind of like interactions that Dove has with like the frog, with the elderly grandmother, and with the fox and the like. Yeah, it just, and the stars, I don't know, they're all so present.
Yeah, it's all characters.
Yeah.
I forgot about the stars too.
Yeah. Oh, I could talk about this movie for literally forever. Should we talk about wisdom? Or no, truth. We have truth and wisdom left. Yeah, let's unpack this. Okay. For truth, you chose.
This totem pole, known as the Kapskolax pole, has stood for 77 years at the Museum of Ethnography in Stockholm, Sweden.
Oh, also by Gil Cardinal.
This was a Gil one?
It's another Gil one.
Oh, is Gil still around?
No, he died when he was 65 in 2015. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So he unfortunately cannot chime in about this. I wish, though. Okay, Totem Return and Renewal.
Yes.
Filmmaker Gil Cardinal documents the events of the final journey of the pole as it returns home to Kitimat and the Haisa people. And yeah, so it's about return of a missing totem pole that went missing in 1929 and was returned in 2003. And then he comes back to the community to talk about it.
Yes.
So tell us about Truth.
So I just want to say that the Haisla Nation does not practice the 7 teachings. Like, that's not a part of their protocol. But they do have protocol of, practicing honesty, truth, all of the things that we carry. They have those very similar teachings as well. So I just wanted to make sure that we,
That was
so that
clear.
we're not pan-indigenizing everybody.
Never.
But so the reason why I picked this particular film under this teaching is because just the bringing home the totem pole and the watching everybody reconnect, watching the community reconnect at Kitimat, reconnect with this pole was, even for me, I have no idea what it meant, but I did feel that connection and that understanding. And to have something taken from you and taken all the way overseas, and knowing that for a really long time and then being able to bring that home is just like probably the most truthful moment. It felt like a moment of truth. Like, we're here, we have power, we can reclaim the things that were stolen from us. I found it really beautiful that one of the protocols for that totem pole was that it can't be put back up because it was already taken away. So this whole, probably till this day, it's just lied flat. You know what I mean? And I thought that's so interesting that they didn't put it back up. You know what I mean? Like, there was none of that. It was, no, we returned it home and it's going to lay to rest. It's going to lay to rest here. And I felt that was so, just so deeply rooted in truth and rooted in that reclaiming and that bringing home, it's not just bringing home our community members, it's also bringing home our artifacts and the things that kept our people going.
Yeah, and what they represent, right? The knowledge of the colonial systems, the knowledge that they've carried, the wisdom that they've carried. Objects are obviously, totem poles are obviously ceremonial objects also. They're not just, it's not just like a hunk of wood. It's also it used to be a tree. Like, the process of creating it is rooted in labor and it's imbued with so much of their stories, right? So yeah, it's I can only imagine. I love this interpretation of it through truth, because also when we talk about truth and reconciliation, for example, how do you see that fitting into it?
That's a hard one. Because I have a long way to go. What is a start? I feel like it's a start. I feel like films like this, experiences like this, opportunities for communities to do things like this are one way of walking into truth and reconciliation and really understanding why reclaiming and reciprocity and all of these things are important to us. But yeah, it's just the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, it's a constant labor of, trying to take back what was taken already. So, there's so many incredible practices shown in the film that are connected to truth. And how do you see them as like not being passive observers, the witnesses to this renewal and return?
I think the fact that they even, went to go get their totem, and the fact that they brought it home and safely brought it home, and that the community was there to receive it. And it wasn't seen as like, because sometimes not everything is received in the way that you think it's going to be received. Sometimes these things bring up triggers for families, bring up triggers for communities. And so when something just naturally is just aligned and just, you know what I mean, comes through, that's meant to be. That's meant to.
And it's so true. It's so true. They do it so slowly, right? Like there's a lot of like care, and it's clearly like a long negotiation. And even when it succeeds, they still like go at it with such humility, as we talked about earlier. Like I know the Haisla Nation, they had like an agreement with the museum, right? And they built like they had a replacement pole carved
for the people in Sweden. Like that's so
for the Swedes.
Yeah.
They didn't have to do that.
Exactly.
They did not have to do that.
Exactly. But this is what I mean. Like when things are done with such genuine kindness, when your heart is there, when that's where your heart is, it just opens up for everything to run smooth, for things to just be aligned, where you're not becoming a passive person just experiencing it. Like everybody's involvement meant something, everybody in that space involvement meant something. And that even though you didn't get to see everybody, you can tell that everybody there, their energy was there for a reason.
Yeah. It's such a testament to like, again, matriarchal societies or matriarchal communities. Like
Exactly.
like this would have not been done the same if this was like a patriarchal community. Like the fact that it was done with absolutely zero spite, or like, there was no like, oh, like we're getting this back and F you for like taking it. It was like, no, this is like recognizing like a long, complicated history, and there is no like spite. It's really just like welcoming it with accountability and like resilience, and not with anger.
Well, where I'm from, when like say somebody says to you, "Oh, I like your earrings," it's protocol to give your earrings to them.
Whoa, really?
Yeah, like somebody says they I don't know, like just things like that. It's like you do things like that because it's they probably want it for a reason. Or if somebody steals from you a lip gloss or whatever, it's like, oh, they must have really needed it. Because they wouldn't have taken it from me if they must have needed it. And so I'm curious, and I wonder if the Haisla community made them another totem pole because there must be something about it that, for the reason why they wanted it, like it must be doing something for them. So let's build them a new one.
So nice.
Too nice sometimes.
Too nice. They did not need to be doing that. But it's literally like, shout out the Haisla Nation.
Yeah.
Shout out matriarchal societies.
Yes.
Shout out truth. Okay, let's wrap this up and talk about wisdom.
What's your favorite subject in school?
Gym.
Hockey.
Geology. I want to
want to go to school anywhere else. If I could take this school to Winnipeg, I would.
Hydrochloric acid here.
All children have a right to learn, and all children are special in their own unique ways. Don't be surprised at what they can do.
You know, it's all about the way you deal with people. When you show kindness to young people and you look them in the eye and you tell them that you care for them, that's where the trust comes in.
That sounds mean, man. That's awesome. Good. Thank you, Scott.
Okay, wisdom through the lens of our
People
last film, Our People Will Be Healed. Huge film at the NFB. People absolutely love this film. Tell us why. Let me give it a little synopsis. Okay. Ugh, Alanis, our queen. 2017 film, Our People Will Be Healed by Alanis Obomsawin. This is her 50th film and reveals how a Cree community in Manitoba has been enriched through the power of education. The Helen Betty Osborne Inuit Education Resource Center in Norway House, north of Winnipeg, receives a level of funding that few other Indigenous institutions enjoy, and its teachers help their students to develop their abilities and their sense of pride. Alanis is obviously like the GOAT, kind of one of our, if not the most prolific filmmaker at the NFB, let alone Indigenous filmmaker. So tell us why you chose this one for the final teaching of wisdom.
Well, this film really reminds me of home. And it reminds me of just the level of work and pride and matriarchy that goes into putting programming and education and all of that out for our people, especially when we're given next to nothing. And just the magic that comes from when we do that, and the wisdom that comes from working in parameters and helping our people in parameters, and then seeing the outcome of some of the people that we get to work with.
Can you give us like an example of a scene that really stuck with you to represent like the wisdom of the Indigenous teachings?
Most of them was like when, you know, the everybody's gathering and just like supporting each other. And like just listening to the people talk about the importance of education for them and just some of their struggles as to why they never seen themselves as becoming educated, and their barriers. And yeah, it just like instead of like showcasing education as like this like teaching, like is like, you know, in the way that we usually see people being educated, it's more like educating people from the wisdom of like listening to people, meeting people where they're at, you know, and just like understanding that people just got a lot of stuff going on sometimes, you know, and to keep creating these types of spaces for our people is really, really important, because it can become like, is this actually working? Am I actually like making change in people's lives? And so documentaries like this prove that, yeah, it seems like we're not getting anywhere sometimes, but like we are, you know, and we've come a long way, and we're continuing to grow and to heal. Like that's why I love the title of this film, Our People Will Heal. Our people are healing. You know, it's like it's a continuous thing. And I love that um, that that she was able to really capture that in a documentary, and it not be like, oh, those poor people. Oh, you know what I mean? Like it was more like, wow, okay, like the grief and all of the things that they went through, even just to be where they're at, it's not a part of their identity. It's the horse. It's where they're at. It's what they've experienced. Um, it's not made them who they are and all of that. It's this is what I'm experiencing. This is what I experienced, and this is what I'm continuing to experience, and this is what I hope for myself.
Yeah. Yeah. Would you say it's quite a hopeful film?
Yeah, in many ways, absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Again, and I see how far we've come. That's one of the things about a lot of the older films that were selected is I really got to see how far we have come, and
Yeah.
I think it's important that we continue to keep making films. I love what Gil does, where he, does something, records something at a time, and then checks in 10 years later. Like I think that's some growth gain there.
Absolutely. And this film was selected at TIFF, wasn't it? It has some like really gorgeous shots of Winnipeg and Norway House. Like it has this kind of like very timeless feel to it, even though it's obviously like shot in it's a lot of it is in like community centers and schools that are it's obviously like 2015 or whatever when it's shot, but like everything has this like really warm kind of feel to it that like is a testament to Alanis's filmmaking.
Her aesthetic.
Her aesthetic, like it really comes through in this. And yeah, like I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of sunsets or like golden hour in this film, and like I don't know. It just the light in it is so incredible.
It's that prairie.
I feel like she
that
captures
prairie light, that prairie
She
sky.
captures the
I have to talk
prairies.
to you after something. It's something. It's something.
Yeah, yeah. I love the scene of when the boys are rowing. They're like in a canoe on the river and they're rowing and it's like raining and they're all just like working together and they're these like young boys and they're just like powering through this like and it looks warm and I don't know, I think it's so beautiful. They're just like working together.
So
like, sweet.
It's beautiful to see, especially young Native boys working together in that context.
It really is.
Yeah.
Incredible hour-and-a-half long documentary.
Yes.
That is
Awesome there.
is just delight, but it's just a delight from beginning to end.
Yes.
Okay, cool. I feel like we kind of covered it. Like, it's about being together. The wisdom is knowing to be together, is knowing that resilience comes in community and not in isolation. The wisdom to know that you can move forward, you can heal, and it takes a village.
Absolutely. And the wisdom of asking for help and the wisdom of being helped. Some people can't be helped,
Yeah.
It takes a lot of wisdom to be like, I need help, and to take that help and go back and do it, extend that help as well, right? Like it's again, it's a lot of growth. I see wisdom and growth as like the same, but it's a lot of
Absolutely. The wisdom to grow, always. Do like the plants and the flowers.
Yes.
Keep growing, please.
Like the trees.
Okay. In the trees. I'm being told we have to wrap this up, but I can't believe we freaking did it. Like,
yes, we did.
Do you have any final thoughts? Final feelings?
I really just want to I really want to encourage Canadians to really dive into NFB's Indigenous catalog. There are a ton of really, really talented filmmakers that NFB has been so fortunate to work with, not just the ones that we have listed here in this series. There are so many other ones, so make sure to go out and check out NFB's catalog of Indigenous films.
Hell yeah. Shout out NFB.
Yes.
Do you want to like tell us where we can find you?
Oh,
like on social media and stuff?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Adeline Bird _ at Adeline Bird _ You can find me. I also have a Substack that I've started that I'm gonna start
Plug
writing.
the Substack. Plug the Substack.
I've only written one article.
Get it on the ground floor. Get it on... It's time. You could be commenter number 1.
Yeah, exactly. And then I am on Facebook. That's
Okay.
really it. Yeah.
Awesome. And okay, amazing. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank
Good luck
you.
and talk to you soon.